compared to Korea, where suicide rates is one of the highest in the world.
Teachers have got enough to do. We didn't have money. We didn't have a car. We didn't have a telephone.
The teachers that I had appear to be white, middle class.
We're not teacher, not pupil, not student. We're human beings.
Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Princess if you are new. This is going to be one of those videos that you can just sort of play in the background whilst you're cooking, driving, doing your makeup, doing your hair. I'm aware the majority of you are subscribed to my channel because you want to see what my life is like in Korea and sort of career content, but there's a lot more to me than just living in Korea, and I occasionally want to discuss topics that are really dear to my heart and that I'm passionate about. I have mentioned before, but I am very passionate about access to and quality of education. I'm so thankful that my old college tutor agreed to come on my channel and have an open discussion around cultural differences when it comes to teacher-student relationship. We also reflect on the current curriculum in the UK and sort of compare it a little bit to Korea's education system. I also open up about some of my experiences at university and at college and some of the challenges that I dealt with. We discuss a lot more than just teaching, so even if you're not interested in becoming a teacher, whatever, I think you'll be able to take something away from this video. Massive thank you to Alison. Let me know if there's anything you took away from it, anything that you can relate to. Also, if you have any suggestions of topics or any videos that you would like me to make. I've got to go. I'm actually going on a date right now, so fingers crossed it goes well. See you guys next time.
Would you just like to introduce yourself and kind of tell us a brief career background?
My name is Alison, and I'm one of Princess's former tutors. To start, I'll just share my background with you all. I qualified probably about 100 years ago now, but more realistically, in 1973, I qualified. Came from Kent, which is 60 miles away from London, and at 18 I was very keen to leave home and to come up to the big wide city. Certainly in the 70s, the beginning of the 70s, it was a very vibrant, it was the period of flower power and hippies, weird and wonderful people walking around. So it was very exciting for a country girl to come up to London. My parents didn't get on, and that's probably one of the reasons why I wanted to move away when I was 18. I didn't pass the 11 plus. I didn't go to the local grammar school, happened to go to a church school. I loved learning and I did extremely well there. I guess I was just a slow learner and I wasn't right at the age of 11 to tackle those academic questions that they ask, and a lot of people fight against it now. So that's why I was drawn to London. So I got a grant to study for 3 years and I lived in Kensington. It was amazing, just down from Harrods. So I went to study home economics. My teaching qualifications and my degree are all in food and nutrition, child psychology and those sorts of subjects. Qualified in 1973. That was before the national curriculum. The national curriculum was, in my opinion, was a very large step for the government to take. Very controlling, very tight-knit now that you have to achieve certain milestones. And I think it's taken away a lot of the creativity and spontaneity and the flow of education. You know, we don't all learn at the same rate, myself included. I've given you an example. I think being allowed to design your own curriculum before the national curriculum came in allowed teachers to be far more creative.
So before the national curriculum, you could just decide on what you wanted to teach. Maths, English, science, weren't they core subjects? You had the freedom to do whatever in those subjects.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Up until GCSE, and then you had the GCSE, you know, well, it was O levels in my day, O levels. You hear primary school teachers now say they can't get through the national curriculum. You know, it's unfair for little ones to put them under pressure. But anyway, I came up to London. I taught in inner schools, disadvantaged. My first job was at Lavender Hill Girls' School. Didn't have a good reputation at all.
How old were you at this time?
I was 21, so I was very young. And then I thought I might actually leave and go travelling. I didn't. I got interviewed, so I got offers of jobs, but at the very last minute, I met my future husband, so I didn't go away. Maybe it was a mistake. I don't know.
Do you regret that decision? Or would you have done things differently looking back now?
I would have done things differently because I love to travel. Though I have travelled quite a bit, I haven't travelled enough. If I had gone, I would have travelled a lot more. Lavender Hill, I was dealing with disadvantaged children and families. I did that for 1 year, and then I got a job at Battersea County in a high tower, high block, very dense, got a real reputation. People used to say, well, if you can keep this children in the classroom, you're doing a good job, you know.
What were some of the feelings you had or experienced going into that kind of area with that reputation of students? Obviously coming from, as you said, did you say you were sort of a country girl?
Well, no, I'm not country with horses and whatever, but certainly when I left, it wasn't a multicultural area at all. So coming up to London and seeing different cultures and different ways of doing it, different foods and all sorts of things was a sensory shock to me. You know, I never flinched at going into these schools. I never thought, oh, I can't do that. Well, I can't remember feeling nervous. I felt very natural, very relaxed. And the thing is that I loved my subject. I came with that premise. I came with that in my heart, that I want to impart the joy and the fascination that I found through cooking and food and nutrition and learning all about it. And I wanted to pass that on, regardless of who sat before me.
What was the predominant kind of ethnic background of your students, or like racial background?
Yeah, mainly Black Afro-Caribbean and Europe. So I had happy memories from the school in Battersea, although it was really tough. Part of what you want, part of your brief is to talk about multicultural and the way in which teachers, you know, deal with the different cultures.
I think those are some of the things that a lot of people deal with and perhaps don't know how to necessarily like overcome. Some people are just ignorant, like not in a negative way, but they literally just don't know certain things. Even that eeny, miny, mo thing, I didn't necessarily know the racial connotations. And it's something I say now, eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Didn't know the extent. Maybe last year during the whole racial uproar, there was a lot of information that I came across, and I think that's when I realized that actually a lot of the rhymes that I sang as a child, they come from a really negative history.
It highlights, you know, how important your own upbringing and the values and the thoughts that you were that were passed through you. Very obviously, you know, your parents would speak with you, your school friends and whatever, but others subconsciously, you know, that we take on board and we don't realise that they remain with us for a long time. Battersea County then led me to my first head of department at Bishop Thomas Grant School. I had 6 years there. In 1985, all the Catholic schools in South London lost their sixth form and they had to go to SFX at Clapham South. So I reapplied for a job at SFX. That's where I stayed for 30 years. 1980 something, I set up a day nursery in the college. And so there's a day nursery that's still there and still going. It's mainly financed by private individuals that live in the Clapham area. My first qualification I didn't use for 20 odd years. Don't get me on that, Princess, because I think it was the worst thing anybody could have done to get home economics off the curriculum. When I first started, I used to teach cooking, how to cook a healthy meal, nutrition. I taught consumer education, how to open a bank account, how to save. Then health, we used to teach sex education, came under the umbrella of home economics because it wasn't academic.
So they got rid of it. These are essential things that we have to go through in life. Like, I'm not being funny, but algebra, I don't remember anything about algebra today. The X plus 2, that was really relevant to like my actual life right now. But learning how to open a bank account and healthy lifestyle, those are things that are necessary.
Home economics was a conglomerate of all of those aspects And look where we are now. As I say, bring back home economics. There's a lot of time. So that was my wide and wonderful background. What's the next question?
So 18 is very young to leave home by yourself. What was the transition like, and how did you navigate that?
Well, because I lived for 3 years in these wonderful halls of residence in Kensington, I will never ever live there again because it's multi-million-pound housing. The principal of the college I went to, her first address, she said, you should think yourself extremely lucky to live in an SW7 postcode. It's the only time in your whole life you'll probably live there, which I thought was very arrogant of her anyway. I could have met a millionaire and been, but anyway, it was like freedom. Albert Museum just up the road, there was the Imperial College, there was Hyde Park, there was King's Road, Fulham. Oh, it was just a fantastic time. And I had a grant, I had money from the local council, to go and study for 3 years. And my mum helped me out with, pocket money.
Would you say you came from a middle class background?
Working class, middle class. My mum had me when she was 42. I didn't think that she'd have any more children. And like a lot of women of her age, she had lots of miscarriages in between. My mother adored me, and I suppose she was so pleased to have a daughter. And I was very, very close to her. I did not have a relationship with my father. And he was a very heavy drinker, if not an alcoholic.
What about your social circle? Were they also kind of the same economic background as you? Because you say you felt protected, you felt that your mother provided the necessities, didn't lack anything, but you wouldn't consider yourself middle class. Are you comparing that to the people around you?
I would say that I was brought up with middle class Victorian values. We didn't have money, we didn't have a car, we didn't have a telephone, but she would always buy me. This is why I have a love of fashion and clothes. She would always buy me the best things. My father did have a lot of money, but he drank it all away. Elder brothers went to a private school, but then the money ran out, and we went, my brother and myself went to the state school. That's why going to London, I think, was such an, excitement and freedom, really freedom to be who I want to be.
I guess I'm asking about your background because I grew up in London and then I moved out for university. Very much similar to you, I never felt like I lacked anything. People consider the area that I grew up in at that time economically deprived. I never felt that way because my mum always provided the things I needed. And it was just me and her until I was 16. Then my sister came along. But I remember when I moved outside of that environment and the people I was around, and I went to Warwick, which was very, very middle class, I found it really, really difficult to find my place and also even socialize with people of a different social background. The things that they did, I didn't do. Even our sense of humor was very different. So that's why I'm asking about where you came from and how that affected your experience in London. But because it seems like you just got stuck into it and was just had a really good time, whereas I was the complete opposite. I became sheltered at university, because I was for the first time I felt like the minority, whereas I had never felt like the minority in my whole life. People would ask me, where are you from? And I think growing up in London, when people ask you where are you from, you just automatically say your ethnic background because they already know that you're British. So my friends, they will say, oh, Pakistani, oh, I'm Nigerian, I'm Jamaican, because we already know that, we're British. When I went to university, I would say, oh, I'm Nigerian. The response was, well, you don't sound Nigerian. And then it clicked in and I thought, oh my gosh, actually I have to say I'm British just so that they recognize. I didn't know, it was just very different. So university wasn't the best time of my life at all.
That's a pity, but I was really delighted to hear that you had got into Warwick University.
I don't know if you remember, I'm not going to say her name, but we had I can't remember what they're called now. We had the teachers who help you to apply to university at college. So I took a risk. I only applied for one university because I can't remember why I done that. And that university was Warwick. And then she said to me, you're not going to get into Warwick. Because also, to be fair, my attendance at college was very poor. It was awful. And I was going through a lot. So she said to me, "You're not going to get into Warwick. You have to apply for other universities." So I did. I just random ones, Manchester Met and some other ones. But then I did get into Warwick, and I remember going to them and say, and I was like, I thought you said I wouldn't get in.
I know exactly who you're talking about. Well done, you. And you can now stick two fingers up at her. And it's what they call one of the red brick universities. It's one of the well-established universities.
I wanted to ask about your thoughts on the current curriculum.
I've been out of it for over 10 years. I don't feel as if I can comment fairly on it. I don't like the idea of such a structured, though I did have to teach it in the end. National curriculum came in, I think, in the 80s. Teachers have got enough to do without having to cross T's and dot I's all the time. You listen now that I've raised this with you. Every TV, every news, everything that comes on where there's a problem in society, it will say, well, schools should teach that. Teachers have enough to do. I used to stay at college until about 9 o'clock sometimes. I would be the last one out there, paperwork and doing all the reports and everything, and it was all online and, ridiculous. And then you're expected to come in the next day fresh and whatever with a beautifully planned lesson. I don't like the constrictive nature of it. During my time teaching the diploma in childcare and education, we had a link with a Swedish college. They have a much more flexible and open curriculum. They have the highest reading age. Finland, for example, there's no homework. Young children don't start school until they're 6. They attend school probably half a day.
That's very interesting compared to Korea, where the students literally go to school from, I don't know, like 9 till sometimes 10, 11 at night time. Yeah, because they go to school and then after school, so the school's maybe from 9 till 1, 2, and then they go to private academies where they do all these extracurricular stuff and don't get home till really late. A lot of people say, yeah, well, they get really good grades, but also the suicide rates is one of the highest in the world, especially for men, because they're so under pressure to perform. It's really sad.
And also the subjects that are so important, like home economics, art, sports, drama, those creative subjects are so important. Last 2 years, COVID and being locked away and our mental health, people are turning to creative things.
My experience in school, the teachers that I had appeared to be white middle class, and that was very far from what my background, realized that they couldn't necessarily relate to me, and that therefore affected the education that was provided and the way I would respond to their teaching as well. You in particular, Alison, I sense that you perhaps didn't have the same upbringing as I did. I was saying earlier on, like I always felt very comfortable in your classroom. I always felt like heard and listened to. There was just something about your lessons. I said this to you in an email, but during my first year at college, you called me out to have a meeting with you because another teacher complained that in her lessons I was always disruptive and always making the other students talk. And I remember you saying to me you were really surprised because in your lessons I wasn't like this, and you said to me you can't pick and choose who you're good in front of or something like that. It was very unconscious. I didn't realize that, okay, there's something about this particular teacher that is making me attentive. That's why I wanted to have this discussion. A lot of people go into inner city schools expecting it to be all rosy, and obviously these students have things that they're going through. They give up so easily and think, do you know what, I'm not going to deal with this, I don't have to deal with it, and they just leave to go to an easier school. So what was it that made you kind of stick it through, even though like you experienced some challenges? What was it that made you stay for like 30 years plus?
I thought you might ask something like this. So I've got 5 points that I want to make. I had a light bulb moment, and that light bulb moment was about listening. SFX wasn't perfect. It was challenging and everything. This light bulb moment was, I've got to listen. We have got 2 eyes, 2 ears, and 1 mouth. God gave us those. you should use them in the proportion that God gave us. You look twice as much and you listen twice as much as you speak. And I think that is crucial for teachers to really engage in the moment when they're in front of that class. 5 better ways to be a listener. Number 1, turn off, especially nowadays, turn off, silence and put away all your devices. Number 2, make the intention to listen and then listen with your eyes and your ears and your heart. Number 3, listen intentionally to understand the position firmly. Think broadly as well. Who, what, where, when, why, how. Number 4, repeat back what you hear so that it reassures the person that you are actually listening and on their side. Number 5, ask questions about their experience. The problem is that a lot of you, and I'm guilty of it myself, we say, oh, well, I did that. Yeah, well, when I did that, I did, I rang that so-and-so. Don't turn it back to yourself. Ask questions about their experience. That would be my 5 top tips.
One of the significant memories I have, and you might not remember this, but towards the end of my course at SFX, I started to bunk off a lot, and I would hardly ever come to lessons, but I would go to the library or something and just do the work there. I was going through a lot at home at the time. I just didn't want to be around people, but I would always go to the library and get my work done. My mum had a partner who was just mean, and he would always say negative things to put me down. I think that's why I really challenged myself, because I've never been the brightest person, very slow learner. But what helped me, my mum got me a private tutor. I think twice a week, this guy would come around and help me with all the subjects. Otherwise, I wouldn't have got the grades that I did. I didn't get the most amazing grades regardless, but I just managed to scrape, into SFX. At that time, particularly, my mum's partner was saying all these things to put me down. You're not going to be anything and blah, blah. It depends on your personality, right? You're someone who can accept, well, this is my fate and I'm not bright and blah, blah, blah. And you can be someone who actually thinks, no, I'm going to prove them wrong and I'm going to do really well. And I don't know what motivated me to be that second person, but I just am like that. I moved to the UK when I was 2. So my mum migrated first and then I came after, because my dad wanted me to have a better education. So even with my university application and certain things, I had to always do myself. When we received letters to the house that were for her, because of the language barrier. Now she can obviously speak a lot more fluently, but I remember I had to read, these letters from really big organizations that I had to read it to her from a very young age. So in comparison to other people, I didn't have the support that I needed. I just had to do a lot of things and learn a lot of things by myself. So anyway, I think my mum kept on getting phone calls home saying Princess isn't in lesson, blah, blah, blah. And you called me in to your office and you sat me down. I think because you had just come off the phone to my mum, and my mum probably shared with you all of the things that she was going through with me, and that she found it really difficult speaking to me. Outside of being, teacher student, I felt like you were just talking to me about life, give me general life advice. And I said to you, well, I don't have a laptop and it's really hard for me to do work at home because I don't have a laptop. I think you had a conversation with my mum, and because of that conversation, she actually ended up buying me a laptop a week later. Yeah, she did, because my grades were actually good. And I think you perhaps communicated that with her. I don't know what you said to her. The conversation must have been quite positive, because at home it wasn't a good relationship. So I think she probably thought that at school, she's getting all these phone calls and she doesn't necessarily, I never told her my grades or what I was doing or anything. So she didn't know what I was actually doing at school. I was thinking of this particular incident, and I obviously as a teacher now, I wouldn't necessarily know how I would have navigated that situation because of the boundaries, right? Calling a student's parent and speaking to them about something so personal. There's almost a fear of the parent thinking that you're overstepping your I don't know, your role in a way. I wanted to talk to you about that and why you felt comfortable doing that.
In the end, we're not teacher, not pupil, not student. We're human beings. I guess being a mother at that time, as a mother, experience, all sorts of different things. It's very difficult. It's just a human thing. I must have obviously valued what you produce. I knew that there was more to you than you were giving at the time. And with the attendance, I mean, we had regulations at the college about attendance. And, although we were very, very, very flexible, the more students we had, the more funding we had. So we were urged to keep students regardless. I do remember the conversation with your mum. I do remember making that. I didn't know that whether I suggested a laptop. She was very attentive, wanted to listen, wanted to help. As a teacher, when you see a student with natural talent and skills wasting their opportunity or not fulfilling, what could be a stepping stone to another valid experience at university or college or wherever, you don't want that student to underachieve. That's the reason why I rang. We're able to work together, allowing you to fulfill the course requirements and eventually get your qualification. I remember you sent me a photocopy of the last comment, because I got you all to write what you had learned over the 3 years. You wrote a brilliant one.
I was literally just looking at it. This is why I think it's so important to have just positive teachers. Even till today, when I just need a little bit of pick-me-up, I just look back at it and read it. Yeah. I'm so happy for you, Princess. You have given an open and honest account, which I respect and hope that you continue to grow in faith and confidence. I think you'll make a perfect primary teacher. Go for it.
I sense, and you can either edit this out or not, I sense that you are still very unsure of your capabilities, that you struggle with your self-esteem or your confidence level. I think that is somewhere in you. And no matter what people say to you, you've got to do a lot of work on your self-confidence. I'm glad to hear that you're doing yoga. I do yoga every week and been doing it for over 40 years, but I also do mindfulness and meditation, and that is really important. Life is a challenge, and there are good times and there are bad times, and that can happen, within a day. Look where you came from, look where you started, look where you are. Believe that you have done amazing. Very proud of you. And I'm sure your mum, are you in contact with your mum now?
Yes, and now we're in a much better place. And I think also for her, just realizing that I'm actually on my own now, and I can actually do it myself.
You're a survivor, and you're absolutely amazing. It will come full circle. I'm sure it will come full circle. I can identify that with my daughter, because I've accepted her for who she is, her personality. She's got loads of friends. She's funny. She's talented. The girl's done good. And we all have our struggles and our journeys. But, very often is something that has happened in our childhood. It's important that at some time, that you address that. You need to either read or find a good counsellor. I mean, I've got another little saying, which is change happens in a moment.
Yeah.
Transitions take time. You made the change to come to in South Korea, it takes time to transition.
Oh, I love that.
Focus on what is the present. Focus what is, not what if. I need a strong body to carry me through this time, and I will get through this just like I have gotten through every difficult time in my life. You look back on your life and many things just fade into insignificance. The good times and the positive times are the ones that stay. As you've just opened your heart to me and explained about I think you've got a lot more, we all have, but I think you've got a lot more to sort of think about and boost own self-esteem. Everybody around you can see it except yourself. Same for all of us.
Interesting that you picked up on that as well. I was going to say, is there any advice you'd just give to young people? Anything. It doesn't have to be related to this. It could be about love. It could be about career. Just anything.
It's not the destination. It's the journey that's important.
What's next for you then? Because I know now you're retired.
I've got some work to do on myself, to do more art, more creative things. My children come and my grandchildren come first. You probably know more about me than I do my children at the moment. Your mum is not going to be around all the time. Yeah. If you want to know anything about your history,
I think this is why I feel so connected to people like you, because number one, you're a talker, you're a storyteller as well. And okay, so that's one of the key things I think is so important that we actually didn't discuss, storytelling and teaching. I think you do that so perfectly well, and it captivates my thinking, right? And my mom is the complete opposite to me. So I've noticed that the older I've gotten, I've gravitated to people that are like you, who listen attentively, but also who storytell. And you do a great job at in my head, I can picture everything you're saying. My mom's very, very private. She doesn't know how to. I asked her to tell me a story once of something that happened when she was younger. She told me that her dad had a turtle and the turtle bit her finger. And I said to her, okay, that's nice, but I need more. Like, that's not really telling me anything about you. And she just didn't know how to.
Something might have happened in her childhood. Victorian child rearing is children should be seen and not heard. She didn't have an opportunity to speak and to find her voice. Say goodbye and God bless. WhatsApp me anytime and I'll do the same.